Recognize our chairperson, Senator Amy Marcos of the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation to sponsor the measure.
Today, I submit to this chamber Committee Report Number 4, sponsoring herewith Senate Bill 1306, an act entitled Postponing the December 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan Elections, amending for the purpose. 3 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, I sponsored the first act passed by the 18th Congress, postponing the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections from the second Monday of May 2022 to December 5, 2020. I then made a promise in full plenary on public record that it would be the last of the repeated postponements of the barangay elections. Today, in the immortal words of the late great Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago, let me confess, just as she did, I lied. I lied. Levity aside, there are compelling reasons why I must renege on that promise. The fact that the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections have been postponed relentlessly through decades merely underlies the unfinished business of deeper issues plaguing both the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan systems. Unang-una, halos taon-taon na tayong nag-e-eleksyon. At kung tutuusin, napakaikli ng 3 taon para gampanan ang napakabigat na trabaho sa barangay. Responde sa tuwing may bagyo, maghahabol ng magnanakaw, mamamagitan sa kapitbahay kapag tumawid ng baboy sa bakuran, pati sa away ng mga asawang nagseselos, lagot sikap. Nung tinamaan tayo ng COVID, sila ang sadyang naging frontliners mula sa ospital hanggang sa bahay-bahay, maging sa bukid at lansangan. Love ko sikap, ang sabi ni Senator Bong Revilla. Sabay rin si Senator Lapid, Cayetano, Ejercito, Escudero, Estrada, Tolentino, na tulad ko na nilbihan sa lokal. A quick review reveals that every barangay election since 1989 has been postponed, resulting in an actual extension of term averaging 4 to 5 years. Hence, I propose that the term of barangay and SK officials be finally extended to 6 years and permanently fix their elections every May, the year following presidential elections. In fact, I have filed Senate Bill number 1195 last August 16, 2022, positing just such an extension and fixing the dates for both the barangay and SK elections for good. Man din di ko tanggap bilang dakilang Ilocana ang gastos na nilalaan sa kada eleksyon. Manual lang nga at hindi automated, pumapatak pa din ng bilyon-bilyon. Sa hirap ng panahon ngayon, hindi ba dapat tayong puspusan magtipid? Magagalit higit sa lahat si Senator Angara sa atin na panay ang hanap ng pera. There is likewise a need to revise and streamline the present Sangguniang Kabataan system. In particular, the feasibility of abolishing the Federasyon ng Sangguniang Kabataan at the barangay level, only maintaining it at the city and municipal levels. Ironically, the good intention of our first anti-dynasty legal provision contained in the SK Charter, disqualifying relatives up to the second degree of consanguinity of affinity to any incumbent official, has rendered ineligible a large class of voters, particularly in the small barangays of 200, 300, 400 voters, where almost everyone is blood-related or by marriage. In my view, instead of an SK federation, a single SK representative in every barangay or municipal council should be considered. Perhaps a federation, a full federation is warranted only at the city or provincial level, with the additional proviso only of reorganizing the SK Federation every 3 years or at midterm, thus avoiding the need for yet another election. Bilang orig na kabataang barangay, lola na po ng mga SK, Pakiwaring kong gaganda ang takbo ng SK kapag naisaayos ang kanilang termino kasabay ng mga barangay kapitan. Thus, this proposed election postponement is a means to buy us time for a series of measures that the Committee on Electoral Reform and People's Participation is proposing to Congress. This is merely a preliminary measure to give us time to study and debate the deeper issues confronting the barangay and SK systems under our present law. September at bare months na po, ramdam na ang Pasko. Paspasan na natin ang pagpapaubaya ng halalang barangay at SK ngayon. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo at mga minamahal kong kasamahan sa Senado.
Maraming salamat, Madam Amy Marcos, our chairperson. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Cavite, no other than Senator Ramon Bong Revilla. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague from Cavite, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to give my full support to this measure. The postponement of barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections is a hot topic that needed to be discussed. And matters related thereto had to be divided urgently before we incur more costs that could otherwise be spent in other government programs that would benefit our people. Narinig na natin ang mga punto na magkabilang panig. And in the interest of the greater good, another postponement cannot be evaded. Nagpapasalamat tayo kay Senator Amy Marcos sa mabilisang aksyon dahil alam nating mismong COMELEC na ang nagsabi na hanggat walang batas na naipapasa ang Kongreso ay patuloy silang maghahanda para sa darating na eleksyon. Ang ina-avoid po din natin dito, Ginoong Pangulo, ay ang magkabangga pa ang mga magkakabarangay, magkakaibigan, magkakapitbahay. Wala naman palang eleksyon. Yun po ang ating dapat ma-avoid. At kailangan ang pinal na desisyon para mahupa ang namumuong pagtutunggali sa ibaba. Hindi na dapat palalong lumala ang sitwasyon sa ating mga barangay. We have to diffuse this brewing tension, and it can be achieved only after we settle this once and for all. Sa panukalang ito, tinimbang natin ang sitwasyon ng bansa sa kasalukuyan. Ang hirap ng buhay at hindi pa rin natatapos na pandemya sa isang banda. At ang epekto ng postponement sa buhay at kapakanan ng taong bayan. To strike the balance, Mr. President, in pushing for this postponement, we also have to ensure that it will be utilized so that more Filipinos are able to exercise their right of suffrage come elections time. After all, their choice always decides the fate of our nation. If the able sponsor, Senator Amy, would allow, may this representation be co-sponsor, Madam Amy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Senator Revilla. And before we recognize anyone else,
Mr. President,
is there
there is a list here on this rostrum, Mr. President, and we'd like to move that we recognize the next co-sponsor.
Before you recognize the next co-sponsor, I'd like to also take note that Secretary Manny Bonoan is with us in the gallery. You already greeted him. You mentioned
yes,
him
we
later.
acknowledge him.
Those who want to see him, particularly the members of the CA, he's making himself available the whole afternoon to talk to all our members. Just for the record, may proceed.
Yes, Mr. President, and before we proceed, I am moving that we adjourn the session at the back, Mr. President, because we can actually hear them here, Mr. President.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Should I call the Sergeant at Arms? Not necessary. It's not necessary, General. we'll appeal to our colleagues in the back if we can.
We appeal, Mr. President.
They can bring them to the lounge
Yes,
here
Mr.
before the anti-lounge
Yes.
to talk to the different secretaries.
Yes, and at this juncture, Mr. President, may I move that we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Davao, Senator Bong to co-sponsor the measure. So move, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague from the island of Mindanao, the great city of Davao, Senator Christopher Bongo is recognized.
Barangay election. Mr. President, I would like to co-sponsor Senate Bill 1306 postponing the December 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections. First, I once again congratulate the COMELEC for the successful and generally peaceful conduct of the May 2022 national elections, which was truly commendable as it was the first electoral exercise in the Philippines to be conducted during a pandemic. As officials of the basic political unit in the country, barangay leaders and SK officials are considered as frontliners in the delivery of basic services in the community. Sila ang araw-araw na humaharap sa ating mga kababayan at nagsisiguro ng kaayusan sa mga barangay. They are the primary planning and implementing unit of government policies and programs and projects in the community. Naintindihan ko po ang trabaho nila dahil sila po ang kaharap ko araw-araw noon. Mga suki po yan at kasamahan natin sa serbisyo. To give local officials of the barangays and Sangguniang Kabataan ample time and continuity to pursue and implement the programs they have set in their respective jurisdictions, I am endorsing this proposed measure. Bigyan natin sila ng mas mahabang panahon para ipatupad ang kanilang mga proyekto na maaaring naantala dahil sa pandemya nung nakaraang 2 taon. Mr. President, gusto ko lang palalahanan ng COMELEC na kapag ipagpaliban natin ang eleksyon, dapat nilang siguraduhin na mas maraming botante ang mga kaboto sa susunod na barangay at SK elections. Hindi dapat makompromiso ang karapatan ng ating mga kababayan na makaboto. Iengganyo natin silang magparehistro at bumoto ng kanilang barangay leaders sa susunod na eleksyon. Habang ginagawa natin ang lahat upang malampasan ang krisis na ito, hindi dapat mapabayaan ang ibang serbisyo na dapat ibinibigay ng gobyerno. Kasama na dyan ang karapatan ng taong bayan na bumoto. Lagi nating unahin kung anong makakabuti sa mga Pilipino, sa mga barangay at SK officials, ma-postpone man o hindi, patuloy ninyong gampanan ang inyong tungkulin at huwag pabayaan ang mga mahihirap, needy, helpless at hopeless nating kababayan. It is for this reason that I would like to request to be made co-author of this measure. Thank you.